And now I'm talking with my friends in Poland, and they are worried that you align yourself too much with Putin. What's your message for them?
Well, if I didn't align myself with both of them, you'd never have a deal. You want me to say really terrible things about Putin and then say, "Hi, Vladimir, how are we doing on the deal?" That doesn't work that way. I'm not aligned with Putin. I'm not aligned with anybody. I'm aligned with the United States of America.
You know, it absolutely kills me that even today, we have people in this country who still believe that there are two parties fighting over really serious issues with two different ideologies. But the truth of the matter is that when it comes to these so-called two parties, when it comes to real issues that really matter, like when it comes to things that make the average American's life better, and when it comes to our foreign policy, which is evil as hell, they're really one party. But what they argue over in public are always staged issues. They are things that everyone in Congress, everyone in the Senate, everyone in the White House, no matter who the administration is, they know that those particular issues are laced with bullshit. No one actually believes in the things that they're fighting over. For example, insider trading. We all know that people in Congress break the law. They inside trade. Yeah, I know they drafted some laws or whatever that kind of govern the way that they can do it. But the fact of the matter is that these people, by nature of their job, gain access to information that's not public knowledge. And before the public even knows about it, they're selling and buying stock based on that information that they have. That is against the law. If you did that, or if I did that as a part of the peasant class, it could be a trade that was worth $500. But if they could find out we made that trade based on some information that wasn't public yet, guess where we go? Prison. Anyone who's read the book Confessions of an Economic Hitman knows what we do overseas. Most people are now more awake than ever. By the way, that makes me think of how the word woke is being misused. That word has just been totally hijacked. And I have not ran into one person who can come up with a logical reason as to why you would use a word, a positive word, a word that has been used positively, to now turn it into something negative. How in the world does the word woke apply to someone who has some moronic belief, which we'll get into in just a few minutes? But anyway, we all know what our government is doing overseas. We all know what's going on in different countries where we're funding coups, where we're not allowing people to have their own elected leaders, where we're funding these people to train junta squads in Latin America and all that. For those of you that don't know what a junta squad is, it's basically a goon squad that's meant to go around and collect political enemies off of the streets, people who our puppets have deemed to be political enemies, people who could possibly challenge their position. We train them how to handle these people. Again, if you read Naomi Klein's book, The Shock Doctrine, you would know exactly where everything that happened in Abu Ghraib and all that came from. It's actually not new at all. We've been torturing people for centuries simply because they don't want us and other European countries to come into their country and take over. You know, a lot of people think that Trump is going to get rid of IS aid. He's not getting rid of IS aid. He's refitting it to use it for his purposes. You see, these different cliques in politics, in high politics, they're in just that. They're cliques. They don't all think the same. They don't all have the exact same agenda. So all he's about to do is he's about to pull the assets out of IS aid away from some of the countries that it's being used in now, and he's going to use it in some of the countries that him and his people want to use it in, to something that they're going to use it now to accomplish their agenda, is what he's going to do. He's not going to get rid of it. A lot of people think that he's going to get rid of it. That's not what he's going to do. He's just going to refit it, as you will, to use it for the purposes that he wants to use it for. And those of you that don't know what IS aid is, it's basically organized soft imperialism. In other words, it's just another strategy used besides bombing and killing people. You go in and you try to do things that's very similar to what the author describes in the book, Confessions of an Economic Hitman. That's a very good book. If you have not read that, you got to read it. Now, there's some people who try to challenge this guy, but one of the things I notice about the people who try to challenge him and say that the book isn't like it's fiction or whatever, or he's lying, they don't deny who he was or his position. And also, when they're refuting his book, they're not really refuting it. They're not refuting a single thing in the book, a single point that he's making. They're not saying, hey, this particular point that he wrote, this is a lie, and I'll tell you exactly why. Because as I was reading the book, I was so fascinated by it. I just knew that there's going to be some people out there who are involved in some of this stuff who doesn't want it to be exposed, that's going to be out here trying to say that this guy is not telling the truth. So I was just interested. So I just started doing a little research online. And that was the thing that was very consistent, because the book is very detailed. And he names names and he talks about people that he had meetings with, dates and times, people that he met at restaurants and had lunch and dinner with and cocktails with and all of that. He talks about executives that he works with. So he's very, very detailed. So if this man was telling a lie, his own details could be used against him to prove that he's lying. But none of the people that I heard that tried to argue against this book used any of that against him. So in my book, the book is, in my opinion, the book is 100% accurate, because it's way too detailed for somebody to not be able to dismantle the book if the guy was truly lying.
Do you have concerns that that's anything that Democrats will be able to use to run against those Republicans?
No, because no, I don't. Because the videos you saw of the town halls were for paid protesters in many of those places. These are Democrats who went to the events early and filled up the seats. If the videos had panned outside the building...
You can't argue they were all paid protesters, though, Mr. Speaker.
Many of them were.
A Republican acknowledged they were his constituents.
One Republican acknowledged they were his constituents. That's fantastic. Okay, but they had Democrats come and fill the seats early, all right? This is an old playbook that they pulled out and ran, and it made it look like that what is happening in Washington is unpopular. But I'm going to tell you, Caitlin, the American people are behind what's happening. The DOGE efforts is polling over 80% right now. They want us to find efficiencies in the federal government. They want the government to be smaller and leaner and more accountable to the taxpayers. And that's what these efforts are all about. That's what the Republican Party is about. That's what our commitment is to do, to make government work better for the people. This is a restoration of common sense above everything else. And I think the American people are going to remain in favor of what's happening here.
Okay, those lawmakers do also represent Democrats. That doesn't mean they were paid to show up if they're upset about
cutting out those jobs. A huge percentage of those people, and I know you care about the veterans, are veterans.
Yes.
And that is a damn shame.
Yes. Yeah.
That is a damn shame.
Yes.
I'm not a Democrat, but I'm worried about the veterans, man.
Well, I yielded to one of my elders, and I appreciate his comments. I think it's a great, I'm not going to, we don't have time for everyone to stand up. I do got 2 more commitments today. Appreciate everybody making the drive out, and God bless America. Thank you.
So we know that all of these more serious issues are going on and have been going on for generations in this country. We all know how the American people's tax dollars is being used and misused. As Western people, and don't get me wrong, people all over the world are very intelligent, but I'm speaking of the West and like here in the United States because I live here. We know a lot of things, but we don't use our knowledge in practice to govern how we're going to fight for ourselves as a people. And the reason why we don't do that is because we have been brainwashed into believing that we have some sort of real interest in these 2 different cults, being the Democratic and Republican Party. And that is exactly what they are. They're cults. And I'll give you an example. When it comes to law enforcement, unfortunately, it's not uncommon to find a situation in this country where a police officer has gunned down a citizen. Now, we have people in this country who will defend the police no matter what the evidence clearly shows them. And then we have people who are willing to go off of what they saw on, for example, video from one of their body cameras or something like that. And I've seen situations in different threads on this subject where the police were clearly wrong. They clearly lied on their report. They clearly was like in no danger at all whatsoever, even though their report said that they were in danger. I've seen situations where the police have said that a person was coming at them. When the footage showed later, when it was finally released, that the person was actually running away from them, or the person simply wasn't doing anything at all that could be logically considered a threat. And the next thing you know, you heard gunshots ring out. Now, you go down into the comment section on a lot of videos that's covering these particular situations, and you will see a lot of people who are acknowledging what they see, acknowledging that it was wrong. But then you also have a lot of people who they're like they're on the side of the police, no matter what the police do. These people are what I like to call brain slaves. They're like involuntary indentured servitude to the state, no matter what the state does. And the reason why that is, a lot of times, it is race sometimes, but a lot of times it's also political culture, if you will. So let me explain what I mean by that. The Republican Party stereotypically is supposed to be known as the party of law and order. Now, the intent of calling themselves the party of law and order is to imply that anyone outside of them is not about law and order. Those people are criminals. That's the sort of thing that actually works, as a matter of fact. I mean, as I'm talking about it now, you're thinking, who would fall for that? But we all know that there are people who fall for that sort of thing. So Republicans, people who vote for them, are people who think that somehow they're actually in the group or in the club, or again, I call it a cult. They feel like I have to defend whatever my cult is defending. And my cult usually defends the police. So even though I see this situation where this officer is clearly wrong, I'm going to say that he's in the right, because that's what my cult espouses. Law and order. We always defend the police, no matter what the evidence shows, no matter what the video shows, no matter what kind of lies is exposed or whatever. Law enforcement is always right. I have seen these people down in videos, down in the comment section in videos, where it's impossible to justify what the officer just did, and still they do it. They still defend the police. And that's largely because of the fact that they're in the Republican Party and they feel like they have to be loyal to the cult. Now, when you swing over to January 6th, the day that, certain people in the government claimed that there was some sort of coup that was being pulled off, which was complete and utter nonsense, you can hear some of the people and some of the footage that the people were recording back then. You can hear them as people who were in the crowds was standing face to face with the police, who was trying to block them from getting in and challenging them. Those that were actually doing it. We know now that some of the law enforcement officers were actually not there to per se challenge them. But anyway, that's another video. But anyway, some of the people, you could hear them saying to the police, why are you doing this? We're on your side. But they failed to realize that in reality, outside of the cult brainwashing, there is no side. There is two sides. There's us and then there's them. There's us, and then there's the powerful, the government, the United States of corporations that control our government. That's the two sides. So in other words, those same people that you were looking at being victimized by police in those videos, those same people that you were willing to look over the bad thing that was happening to them and the evidence that said that the police was wrong, you're on those people's side. You're not on the side of the state or law enforcement. Law enforcement is a tool of the state to use against the peasantry, and you are a part of the peasantry, as am I. So this is just one example of a particular issue in this country that we need to get to the point where we're no longer debating this. Like, there are people on social media and also in different forums that actually debate this sort of thing. There are too many people out here that don't really seem to understand that as average citizens, where we really stand when it comes to the point of view of the oligarchy in this country. They use us as a means to an end, but in reality, the way they view it is there is us and then there's them. And until we get to the point where we look at it like that, we're going to forever as a group of people, as a group of citizens, just average, everyday people, men and women, we're going to continue to get screwed by the powerful until we can come together as we have in the past. Now, our ancestors and forefathers did that in the past. That's how we got a lot of the things that we have today. And we're sitting here and we're watching these people dismantle the things that our forefathers, I don't care what race you are, you took place in fighting for certain things in this country. For example, most Americans agree that they don't want the government to do anything in terms of dismantling Social Security. Yet both parties want to dismantle Social Security. Obama wanted to basically, he didn't want to dismantle it. They didn't want to do it that quickly, but he wanted to severely weaken it. And the only reason he didn't do it, and this was going to be done in secret. This was not going to be covered in the media. And even though I do have issues with Bernie Sanders, the one thing I will give him is that back then, he brought that story to the forefront and took a couple of busloads of people up to the White House, and they protested right in front of the White House. So that was basically taken off of the agenda as far as the Obama administration, and they no longer touched it again. But Obama's not the only one. I'm not picking on him. Every administration that has gone into the White House for about, I would say, since Reagan, possibly someone before Reagan, but we'll just say since Reagan, has tried to weaken Social Security. But our forefathers, and I'm just using Social Security as an example, but if we don't stop fighting amongst ourselves about nonsense, like, for example, way too many people online are debating this whole, a woman can do anything that a man can do. A man can be a woman. A man could be a woman if he wants to the point where he should be able to walk into a women's restroom and stand next to a little girl in the restroom and use the restroom. A man should be able to get involved in women's sports, even combat sports. I saw a video of a guy beat the hell out of a woman in a boxing. I think it might have been UFC. I think it was like a UFC type of match, and he really beat the hell out of this woman. Now, because of things like this, they're not doing that anymore. I don't know if they stopped at 100%. I believe they have, but definitely that point that a man should be able to compete with women in sports, especially combat sports, that's definitely not a thing anymore. And it never should have been. In a world that makes sense, in a world that is not bizarro world, where up is down and down is up and left is right and right is left, that sort of thing never should have even happened. It is absolutely absurd. And the only reason why people pretended to believe that sort of thing should be a thing was because of political bias. They've been mentally conditioned to support any issues that their cult, whether it be Democrat or Republican, is putting forward as an issue. If the Democrats say that that's what they believe, then these people that follow the Democrats are going to say, well, that's what they believe too, even if it's something that's totally absurd. Wars are bad only when the other cult is doing it. But when their cult is doing it, war is good. There must be a good reason for it, right? To be killing all these people. And I saw a forum where they were actually debating whether or not the American people can continue to trust the intelligence community. And I thought to myself, this is an absurd debate. Like, the intelligence community, how many times do they need to lie to us and use the intelligence? Like, they come out and they tell these lies and then they say, well, that's what the intelligence said. And then, we just had to go with it. How many times does that have to happen before we just see the obvious? And we all see it. But I think the thing is, people don't want to admit that the reason why they support the state when they get ready to go overseas and do things they shouldn't be doing, they don't want to admit that they really don't care what they're doing to people abroad as long as their life is okay. Like, do you do that in real life? If you know someone that frequently lies to you, do you ever ponder whether or not all of a sudden you should start trusting them? I mean, of course not. I mean, when we're lied to repeatedly by someone, or it could be a company, right? If you're dealing with a company, or, whether, it's a company that you always purchase a product from, but you find yourself in a situation where they're deceiving you all the time, you're going to stop doing business with that company because you can no longer trust them. That's how it works normally. Like, who actually believes that a company should have to hire people simply based on diversity? Who actually believes that a company should lend money simply based on diversity? That is ridiculous. And I can kind of see the basis for how that BS was created. I'm not one of these people walking around pretending that racism doesn't exist and that there aren't injustices in the world. But the solution to it is not to tell banks, for example, to give loans in a manner where they can simply prove that they're giving loans to different types of people from different races and ethnicities and things of that nature. You know, you just want to make sure that no one is being genuinely discriminated against. I mean, for example, let's say, for example, there's a place, a bank that's mainly staffed by people that are Latino, right? You let that bank know that, hey, we don't want to walk up in here and look at your records and see that everyone who's Latino, regardless of what their credit looks like, is getting all of these primo type deals on their loans and all that and getting these excellent rates. But everyone else who comes in here is getting, basically trash by comparison. And this is the sort of thing, it does exist. I'm not saying it doesn't exist. There have been numerous undercover studies where people have proven for a fact that this sort of thing in banking and in many other industries, it does exist. I once worked for a company, and I'm not going to mention the races involved or ethnicities involved because really it's unimportant. But I worked for a company that had a policy, a conglomerate that had a policy, now I work with their competitor, that people with college education always was picked from first when it came to promotions. Like that superseded even seniority. You could have been there 10 years, but if a person just walked in the door with a college degree, that person would be considered for a promotion before you. That was actually the company's policy. But the people who were in charge, they were not adhering to that policy to the point where they weren't even promoting people who not only had college degrees, but also they had a college degree and they did their job very well. Now, fortunately, somebody had the balls to notify corporate, to let corporate know what they were doing. And that ended. And a lot of people that got stepped over all of a sudden got promoted. Again, these people not only had college degrees, they did their job very, very well. So they had the college degree and they also did their jobs very well. And how do you handle a situation like that? You don't go in and say, hey, we want you to start promoting more diversely. You don't do that. You go in and you say, hey, the next time we come here and take a look at the list of people that you're promoting, we need to damn sure make sure that the people on that list qualify for the promotions, and that people who are less qualified are getting promoted over people who are more qualified for an array of different reasons. Because what the company found was that even people without college degrees were being discriminated against in comparison to other certain groups of other people who didn't have college degrees. In other words, these people had things over them like their seniority. They had performance numbers where their performance numbers was better than them. Yet these people with lesser performance numbers and people with lesser seniority was being promoted before them. So clearly there was an issue, but you don't solve that issue by coming in telling people that they need to start promoting based on diversity, because that's really not the issue anyway. The issue here is bias. You don't really get into, the best way to fight that sort of thing is don't really get into the reason for it. Like I actually had a supervisor, I wrote a supervisor up who did something to me on a job once. And that thing that he did to me was clearly against the rules. He clearly was not supposed to do it. Well, and it was involving vacation. He tried to ask me in the meeting when we were discussing it, he brought up race and he was asking me, am I saying that he's a racist? And I never said that. See what he was trying to do? He was trying to make the reason that I wrote him up an absurd reason is what he was trying to do. I told him, no, I have no idea whether you're a racist or not. I really don't care. All I care about is the fact that you did this to me and you weren't supposed to do it according to the rules and the regulations. You did the wrong thing. And you should have seen the look on his face when I told him that, because when he went there, he really thought that I was going to just go for it. Like a hungry, mad dog that just came up on a big piece of chicken. I mean, he really thought, yeah, I'm going to throw this out there and then you're going to grab it because you probably want to tell them I'm a racist. And the truth of the matter is, I didn't know whether or not he was a racist or not. I really didn't care. And when he brought it up, I was kind of like, dude, what are you talking about? I'm focused on one thing, the fact that what you did was wrong. And that's what we need to do. You know, we all remember these, I think it was 2020 that did some kind of investigative thing where they had people go into these different banks undercover and all of that. And it didn't work out so well for the bank. So, and the whole, and I'll give 2020 credit, they were basically going by qualifications, not color, qualifications. Because when you sit down in front of one of the executives who was involved in this, and you put those numbers in front of him and you say, hey, look, what I want to know is this. Why was this person who was much more qualified than this person by every metric, why did they receive an inferior loan from you, but this person that was less qualified received this absolutely wonderful loan from you? Please make that make sense. And all they could do was sit there and look stone-faced. That's all they could do, because there's no answer for that. You're not talking about color. You're talking about, hey, qualifications. This person is actually, this credit is excellent. His income is excellent. His job stability is excellent. And the person that they sent in that was less qualified, they intentionally sabotaged that man. He worked for them. They wanted him to look bad, but he still went in and got the primo loan. Now, any politician who would have gotten involved in something like that, like a local politician, if they would have went in there and told them, hey, you need to start having more diversity when it comes to the people you give loans to. Now, that person would know that he's basically sabotaging his efforts to try to straighten that situation out. Because basically what he's doing at that point, and yes, these people are smart enough to know this sort of thing. They're not stupid like you think they are. A lot of times people who are stupid can use that as cover as long as you believe they're stupid and not calculating. These people are calculating in their efforts to sabotage different efforts and movements. Now he knows what he's going to do. He's going to turn the bank into a victim, because what's going to happen is the bank is going to be forced to start giving out loans to people that they should not give loans to. And then later on, they're going to be able to fight against whatever rules that he implemented, the politician, because they're going to be able to show the numbers and show that as a result of what he came in there and told them to do, now they're in the red. Now they're giving out loans to people that aren't paying back. And now the bank is in trouble. So you've turned the bank into a victim. This has us fighting over things that we should not be fighting over, and it is intended to do that. What we need to be doing is focusing on things that aren't opinionative, things that we know that they're doing wrong and that they shouldn't be doing it. Like, look at this right here. Critical press coverage of congressional stock trading did not end with the pandemic. In March 2023, certain lawmakers reportedly sold large amounts of stock held in banking corporations in the midst of a possible national bank crisis. On March 10th, 2023, an investment account owned by Representative Jared Malkowitz, I guess that's how you pronounce that. His children sold between $65,000 and $150,000 worth of shares in Seacoast Bank Corp. After I'm not going to pronounce that. Malkowitz, yeah, I like to meet a challenge. Malkowitz, I think that's what it is, had attended a bipartisan congressional briefing on the banking crisis, and just days before Seacoast shares fell nearly 20%. Now, he's not the only one. You see here they list Nancy Pelosi. They talk about some other people down here. Let me see who they're talking about here. Okay, so we have this guy here, Michael McCall, who sits on the House Foreign Affairs and House Homeland Security Committees, where he has access to highly sensitive and critically important information about the tech and defense industries, purchased tech stocks in over 140 separate transactions. In the same year, he sold 10.4 million in technology stocks and over 9 million in communication services and financial services stocks, and over 6 million in both consumer, cyclical, and healthcare stocks. In its 2022 study, the New York Times found that 13 lawmakers reported that they or immediate family members had bought or sold shares of companies that were under investigation by their committees between 2019 and 2021, and that 44 of the 50 members of Congress who were most active in the markets bought or sold securities in companies over which their committee assignments could have given them a degree of knowledge or influence. So while I see a lot of threads online, and a lot of posts online, and a lot of videos on YouTube about absurd subjects where people are debating things where there is no debate and they only think there's a debate because they've been brainwashed into believing there's one on certain subjects, I don't see anybody posting about this. I don't see any, just outrage. Like, of course, if you look in the search engine, you can pull some stuff up on this subject, but I'm saying it's not right there in your face. It's not going viral online. These sorts of subjects aren't. But this is just an example of the sorts of things that we need to be talking about more online. And these people who have you talking about this other nonsense, these people are a part of the problem. And I firmly believe that a lot of them are plants, that they're actually put there for that very reason, because it kills me how hard it is for some people, like just an average person, to start a YouTube channel and start a successful YouTube channel. They can't get hardly any views. And then you get this person that you never heard of comes out of nowhere, and all of a sudden, within a few months, his channel is like super popular, super successful. He's already got an online store up and all of that, and he's making all this money. He's getting all of these views. He's getting more views than CNN or Fox News. And all of a sudden, he's got this big following. And then all of a sudden, he's being invited on other channels to be interviewed. And it's just really suspicious. And when I look at the things that some of these people are talking about, and I'm like, these people never really talk about anything that we need to be talking about. And then when people bring up subjects that we should be talking about, it's almost like they find some kind of way not to talk about it. They get out of it, but they want to talk about the more absurd things. They sit up and point the finger at people about cultural issues, when the truth of the matter is that if these cultural issues didn't exist, they have the kind of business model where they would have no business. You have to wonder, okay, if all of a sudden all of these ridiculous social issues were to just go away, they would just be solved. What's this guy or this woman going to talk about then? You just kind of wonder that. Like, I bet this person could not find it. Probably what would happen is the show would become totally uninteresting, but because they're a tool of the state, YouTube would probably help them in the algorithm or whatever. But that is a thing, unfortunately. But yeah. So anyway, guys, I'm just going to leave it right there, man. I just wanted to vent a little bit, man. I'm just looking around at things that people are talking about, people that just allowing themselves to be distracted about these issues that aren't even important in comparison to the things that we need to be talking about. And this is the things I discussed in this video. Those are just examples. But anyway, guys, tell me what you think down in the comment section. And look, just be respectful. And, you can totally disagree with me or whatever. I'm not a fascist, so I don't care. You can disagree with me. That's totally cool. But just be respectful. And look, if you like the video, please give it a like. And if you're not subscribed, get subscribed and hit the bell. This channel has had a rough road. It's one of the reasons why I kind of stepped away from it. Every now and then I'll drop a short. But yeah, I think I've kind of gotten on the bad side of the algorithm, if you know what I mean, the algorithm. So yeah, but anyway, guys, talk to you later.